The Canadian Broadcasting Corporation has just confirmed what tennis fans have been whispering for weeks. The 21-year-old Filipina sensation is officially the biggest draw in Toronto. And the WTA is left stunned, because she's done what even the sports legends couldn't. The Canadian Broadcasting Corporation had seen a lot of tennis over the years. From the heyday of the Canadian Open to the emergence of homegrown stars, they had covered it all. But when they sat down to analyze the numbers from the 2026 tournament in Toronto, even the veteran journalists were left stunned. The headline said it all. Filipino tennis star Alex Eala riding a wave of popularity into Toronto tournament. And the numbers behind that headline told a story that would leave the WTA scrambling to understand what they had just witnessed. According to Karl Hale, the tournament director for the National Bank Open, the moment Eala's appearance was announced, something unprecedented happened. We've never seen a player ranked outside the top 5 have this type of effect, Hale told CBC. Her fans, he said, were specifically waiting to see when she played. The statistics were staggering. Eala's Wednesday night match sold out in just 30 minutes, not in an hour, not in a day, in half an hour. And this was a player ranked no. 20 in the world at the time, not number 1, not number 2, not even in the top 5. But as tournament organizers quickly realized, ranking numbers had nothing to do with the phenomenon they were witnessing. The demand was so overwhelming that organizers were forced to make a decision that had never been made before. The Grandstand court, which held just 2,800 seats, was immediately deemed too small. We can't put her on there because she probably sold upwards of 5,000 tickets, Hale told the Tennis Channel. Eala's match was moved to center court, which accommodates over 10,000 fans. In nearly 2 decades of running one of the oldest WTA 1000 tournaments in the world, Hale had never seen anything quite like it. And it wasn't just ticket sales. The atmosphere, the energy, the sheer volume of fans who had poured into CBC Stadium had transformed the Canadian Open into something that felt more like a homecoming than a tennis tournament. The pathway between food kiosks and brand activations was filled with people carrying Philippine flags or wearing blue and red at every turn. Fans lined up at least 6 or 7 deep on the one open side of a practice court, just hoping to get a glimpse of the woman taking tennis by storm. A food vendor had even swapped its chicken teriyaki for Filipino chicken adobo rice bowls in honor of Eala playing, a first in tournament history that left Hale completely speechless. It's the first time I've ever heard of a tournament halfway through adding a food offering just because of a player, he admitted. The phones rang, tickets sold, and boom, it was sold out on Wednesday night just like that. The CBC report confirmed what the tennis world had been whispering for weeks. Alex Eala wasn't just winning matches. She was drawing crowds that rivaled, and sometimes surpassed, the biggest names in the sport. And the WTA was left stunned, trying to figure out how a 21-year-old from the Philippines had become the biggest draw in Toronto. The CBC report had confirmed what the tennis world had been whispering for weeks. Alex Eala wasn't just winning matches. She was drawing crowds that rivaled and sometimes surpassed, the biggest names in the sport. But the numbers behind that headline would leave even the most seasoned tennis observers scrambling for answers. Karl Hale, the tournament director for the National Bank Open, had seen a lot in his nearly 2 decades of running one of the oldest WTA 1000 tournaments in the world. He had hosted Serena Williams, Venus Williams, Roger Federer, Rafael Nadal, and Novak Djokovic. He had witnessed the regenerations of champions. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared him for what happened when Alex Eala arrived in Toronto. We've never seen a player ranked outside the top 5 have this type of effect, Hale told CBC in an interview that would be shared across the tennis world. I think her fans were specifically waiting to see when she played. The moment Eala's Wednesday night match was announced, the phones at the tournament office began ringing off the hook. The Filipino community, which had been calling for months now, according to Hale, was ready. When we announced it, the phones rang, tickets sold, and boom, it was sold out on Wednesday night just like that. In just 30 minutes, a session that was supposed to be a routine early round match had completely sold out. The numbers were staggering. Approximately 3,100 tickets moved in half an hour. The demand was so overwhelming that organizers were forced to make a decision that had never been made before. The Grandstand court, which held just 2,800 spectators, was immediately deemed too small. Eala had already sold upwards of 5,000 tickets for the match, meaning the Grandstand would have been packed to nearly twice its capacity. She was moved to center court, which accommodates over 10,000 fans, and that sold out too. The significance of this decision wasn't lost on anyone. According to Tennis Connected, Eala was the first player, male or female, to sell out an opening Wednesday night session at the Canadian Open since Serena Williams, not Rafael Nadal, not Roger Federer, not Novak Djokovic, just Serena, and now Alex Eala. But the numbers didn't stop there. The National Bank Open record attendance for 2026. Last year we did 504,000 fans. We're breaking records on Saturday of attendance. 9 of the top 10 are here, Hale said. The Eala effect was driving numbers that the tournament had never seen before. Beyond the hard courts, the Eala effect had even reached the food court. Organizers added chicken adobo to the menu, a traditional Filipino dish, and quickly sold out. It's the first time I've ever heard of a tournament, halfway through the tournament, add a food offering just because of a player, Hale admitted. The numbers told the story of a phenomenon that had transcended the sport. A 21-year-old from the Philippines, ranked just 20th in the world, had become the biggest draw in tennis. And the WTA was left stunned, scrambling to understand how a player without a Grand Slam title had achieved what even the sport's legends couldn't. For Andy Roddick, the former World No. 1 turned podcaster, the explanation was simple. Eala-mania is fun, he said on his podcast. When you have watch parties in arenas around your country for a 4th-round match, I'm in. The CBC report had confirmed it. Alex Eala wasn't just a tennis player, she was a movement, and the numbers were just the beginning. When Alex Eala walked onto center court at CBC Stadium, the roar that erupted was unlike anything the Canadian Open had ever experienced. Not just loud, deafening. The kind of noise that rattles the bones, that makes the ground vibrate, that leaves even the most seasoned tennis observers scrambling for words. Eala-mania was in full swing in Toronto, reported the Philippine Star. It seems wherever Alex plays, she has a home court advantage. It was no different in Toronto. The crowd had transformed CBC Stadium into what felt like Little Manila. Philippine flags hung from railings in boxes and the upper deck. Fans dressed in red, blue and white filled the seats. One supporter even showed up wearing a dinosaur costume wrapped in the Philippine flag. At least a dozen large Filipino flags were draped over railings. The chants of "Let's go, Alex" rained from the stands with a ferocity that left even the most seasoned tennis observers stunned. Dion Castillejo, a traveling Filipino journalist and former tennis player who has covered Eala's journey around the world, described the scene as unlike anything she had ever witnessed. Standing on a small grandstand, she signed autographs and took pictures with a loud and proud community that showed up in full force. She called it a super wild Filipino crowd. The loudest I have ever heard. It felt like it was in the Philippines. Incredible. Mark Pecci, the play-by-play commentator on the WTA Tour World Television feed, captured the moment perfectly. It's the kind of noise that accompanies a Grand Slam win, and this is just the 2nd round here in Toronto. The one and only, the extraordinary Alex Eala doing things in tennis that just seem out of this world. For Abby Albino, co-founder of Rise Tribe, a Filipino-Canadian community organization, the atmosphere felt like she was in Manila, not Toronto. She praised Eala as an iconic representation of the Filipino community, embodying the pride and resilience of a diaspora that had found a hero in a 21-year-old tennis player. It was crazy, she said. It was overwhelming. The energy, the passion, the love. Rosemary Ami Seaborn, who works on Toronto's annual Taste of Manila Festival, explained why Eala's connection to the community runs so deep. The one thing about Alex that everybody's proud about is that she acknowledges being Filipino in every event. She will correct your question and say, "I think what you should ask me is if I'm proud of being Filipino and being here." She has embraced it. I think she's really proud of what's happening. The roar that shook Toronto wasn't just about the tennis. It was about representation. It was about a community of over 270,000 Filipinos in the Greater Toronto area finally seeing one of their own on the biggest stage. It was about a nation of 110 million people finding a hero who embodied their hopes and dreams. And it was about a 21-year-old who had become a symbol of pride, resilience, and the unbreakable Filipino spirit. The CBC report had confirmed what the tennis world had been whispering for weeks. Alex Eala wasn't just winning matches. She was drawing crowds that rivaled, and sometimes surpassed, the biggest names in the sport. But the numbers behind that headline revealed something even more significant about the state of tennis itself. Asia has had few players break through the top ranks of women's tennis. The Philippines, a country of 100 million people, had never produced a tennis star before Eala. That's what made her rise so extraordinary, and so important for the sport. Eala's popularity signals a shift in tennis that many have long called for, more diversity. The top-ranked players in the sport are concentrated in North America and Europe, with dominant clusters in the United States, Russia, Spain, and France. A player like Eala was never supposed to emerge from a country where tennis is played mostly in private country clubs, where facilities are limited, and where boxing and basketball have historically dominated the sporting landscape. But she did emerge, and she was bringing a nation with her. When you have watch parties in arenas around your country for a fourth-round match, I'm in, said American tennis star turned podcaster Andy Roddick, who has dubbed the phenomenon Eala-mania. The Filipina sensation, now ranked 20th in the world, was already shattering expectations. Her victory at the Mubadala DC Open in Washington made her the first tennis player from the Philippines to bag a WTA title. She was no longer just a promising young player. She was a legitimate contender. Eala has noted her unique position in the sport, embracing her Filipino fans and speaking in her native tongue often during her tournament interviews. Jason Maglante, Tennis Canada's Senior Director of Ticket Sales, captured the sentiment perfectly. We're pretty proud of anything that comes out of our country in the Philippines. The only thing I know of with this kind of hype among Filipinos, in the sports realm, would be the boxer Manny Pacquiao. For the Filipino diaspora, Eala represents something far deeper than athletic achievement. She represents the possibility that a young Filipino can succeed on the global stage. She represents a nation's pride and resilience, and she represents a shift in a sport that has long been dominated by the same countries. It is a joy to watch an entire country, the Filipino diaspora and the rest of the tennis world, get excited to walk alongside Eala in pursuit of bigger titles. Even a Grand Slam trophy, wrote a Filipino-Canadian tennis fan in the CBC. The numbers told a story that even the most experienced tennis observers were struggling to process. A player ranked no. 20 in the world had just achieved something that the sport's biggest names couldn't touch. Karl Hale, the tournament director, had been running the Canadian Open for nearly 2 decades. He had hosted the biggest names in tennis history. But when he sat down to analyze the data from the 2026 tournament, even he was left shaking his head. We've never seen a player ranked outside the top 5 have this type of effect, Hale told CBC, his voice carrying the weight of genuine astonishment. The numbers were staggering. Eala's opening match sold out in just 30 minutes. Approximately 3,100 tickets moved in half an hour, not in a day, not in an hour, in 30 minutes. According to Tennis Connected, only Serena Williams had achieved this feat in the last 20 years. Not Rafael Nadal, not Roger Federer, not Novak Djokovic, just Serena, and now Alex Eala. The demand was so overwhelming that organizers were forced to make a decision that had never been made before. The Grandstand court, which held just 1,800 spectators, was immediately deemed too small. Eala had already sold upwards of 5,000 tickets for the match, meaning the Grandstand would have been packed to nearly twice its capacity. She was moved to center court, which accommodates over 10,000 fans. That sold out too. A sold out Wednesday night this early in the tournament is really unheard of, Hale said in a press conference. But the numbers didn't stop there. Eala's doubles match with Venus Williams was also moved to center court, and organizers were anticipating another sellout. The tournament was tracking record attendance for 2026. Last year we did 504,000 fans. We're breaking records on Saturday of attendance. 9 of the top 10 are here, Hale said. The Filipino community had been calling the tournament office for months, according to Hale. My mother knows her uncle, sister's brother, cousin. They were so excited to have her. When the schedule was finally announced, the phones rang, tickets sold, and boom, it was sold out on Wednesday night just like that. Beyond the hard courts, the Eala effect had even reached the food court. One vendor swapped their chicken teriyaki for Filipino chicken adobo rice bowls, a first in tournament history, and quickly sold out. It's the first time I've ever heard of a tournament halfway through adding a food offering, just because of a player, Hale admitted. The CBC report confirmed what the tennis world had been whispering for weeks. Alex Eala wasn't just winning matches. She was drawing crowds that rivaled, and sometimes surpassed, the biggest names in the sport. And the WTA was left stunned, trying to figure out how a 21-year-old from a country of 110 million people, which had never produced a tennis star before, had become the biggest draw in Toronto. For Andy Roddick, the former world #1 turned podcaster, the explanation was simple. Eala-mania is fun, he said on his podcast. When you have watch parties in arenas around your country for a fourth-round match, I'm in. For the Filipino community, the numbers represented something far deeper. The Greater Toronto Area was home to over 270,000 people of Filipino descent, according to the 2021 census. And they had shown up in numbers that left even the most optimistic organizers speechless. Right now, Alex Eala was their bayani, their national hero, and the CBC report had proven that her popularity wasn't just a passing moment, it was a movement. A movement that had taken over Toronto and left the WTA scrambling to understand what had just hit them.